in progress.
Okay.
So, yeah, you made it this time, Si.
Yeah,
Impressed.
we tightened a lot of screws.
Uh-oh.
And we hoped for the best.
All right.
Well, you found the right one, whatever it was.
Is the email that I'm sending you guys on Sunday okay? Is that the good time to send it?
That works
Oh,
perfectly.
yeah.
Okay, and then do the reminder on Tuesday again?
That's very nice that you do that. Is that a lot of extra work?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, all I do is scan the book and then put it on my little chip here and then plug it in and do a thing.
Okay.
So it works.
Morning, Rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi, you're home.
No, I'm coming home tonight.
Ah, okay.
All right.
Still
Did
in
you
New Jersey.
Did you get snow? I heard New
Uh,
Jersey had some snow.
A little bit, but I've been inside. But it's cold. It's not a vacation-y place. My skin is starting to turn green from the
Uh-oh.
Okay,
chemicals.
time to come home.
You have a cold.
Time to come home.
Rabbi, do you have a cold?
Do I seem like I do?
Sounds
Your nasal passages, what kind of,
Oh, no. Well, I hope not.
we hope not to.
all right. You're not used to all that humidity over there.
I'm used to the 114-degree temperature.
110% humidity. It's
Mhm.
probably 90 there. Okay.
Hi, Bernie.
Good morning.
Ernie,
Hi, Saran.
Um,
Hi, Pam.
Hi, everybody.
hey, Pam.
I got to take my grandchildren to Temple Beth Shalom.
Oh, good.
Yeah, worked out. They were here for all of Thanksgiving week. So I took them in, showed them around.
Mhm. Show 'em what Grandpa does.
The rabbi
Grandpa's
wasn't there.
Sabbath.
The rabbi wasn't there Friday night.
No, I meant, did you show them the Sabbath where your grandpa works?
Oh, yeah.
Well, did you point out all the things you've done also?
Hmm.
No, you didn't show them the garden?
And at first it was dark.
Oh, the night.
Ah,
Yeah. And secondly, they wouldn't appreciate it at their age. So
Are they teenagers?
no. First grade and third grade.
ah,
My favorite grades.
impressionable age.
Yep.
But they still like their teachers at that age.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I remember subbing in 4th grade. That's when I start to turn.
Oh, and see, I always thought they turned in 5th grade.
Yeah, 5th and then 6th grade was, oh my God. And they had junior high school, so they thought they were hotshots in 6th grade, and they would be 7th grade, they would be in junior high. And
Yeah.
big
Mm.
guys.
When I was teaching, 5th grade was when their hormones changed.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yes,
And that's when they started to really change their personalities.
especially
Yeah.
the girls.
That's why I would never go beyond 5th grade.
You knew danger when you saw it.
Absolutely, and I kept away from it.
Hmm.
I remember it was a kid in, I think it was 4th grade, and I was taking attendance and he wouldn't give me his name. And I looked inside his book to get the names, I could check it off. And he said I was invading his privacy and he was
Oh,
gonna,
yeah.
yes, you know,
At that age, really?
yes.
Surprising. Wonder
And
where he
you
learned
realize
that from.
he probably got that from his
And
parents.
that goes back
Yeah,
a long
exactly.
time. That goes back into maybe the 70s. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Imagine what they're like now.
right. Yeah,
And it wasn't even a big city school, it was a little
Mm.
town.
yeah. Blame the parents.
Absolutely.
They watch too much TV, you know, all that stuff.
Hi, Evelyn. Welcome back.
How's everybody?
Okay,
Evelyn,
I am good. I am good.
How
I am
is-
good.
you look better, Steve.
I feel better. I'm just like feel like rejuvenated.
And you could see that last week you looked wiped out.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
anyway. He went to the gym today.
Okay, where's our prayers here? Let's see. Okay.
Yeah.
Should have it.
I got my sheets in there.
Rabbi, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I don't have any announcements other than I hope everyone is getting the emails that I'm sending on Sundays. And then your reminders on Tuesdays. And unfortunately, yesterday I forgot to put the link in, so I apologize for that. But anyway, if the link is not on the email, remember it's also on the temple bulletin that
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
Thursdays. So anyway, let's go ahead and start with the blessing together. Baruch.
Adonai,
Adonai,
Elohim
Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher
Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu t'her Torah.
Blessed are
Blessed
you,
are you, Adonai,
our
our
God,
God,
ruler
ruler
of
of the world,
who has
who
sanctified
sanctified us with your commandments
and
and commanded us to engage in the words of the Torah.
Amen. All right, Rabbi, she's all yours. We're going to talk about the rape of Dinah.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, as the case may be.
Where are
And-
you? Where are
Sure.
you this afternoon?
I'm in
Rabbi's in New Jersey.
He's in New Jersey.
And I think it's 2 hours later,
Right.
but I'm not sure. Today we have a very difficult story in the Torah, and it's difficult because we don't really know what happened. The question is, what is rape under a certain cultural circumstance? And so the text is not very clear if this is rape in the classical sense of this prince from another tribe grabs a woman and forces her to have sex against her will, or whether it was voluntary, that the woman was a fully voluntary participant, but that the man had not gotten permission from his male relatives, and hence the male relatives were infuriated and felt that this is a violation of the woman, that she doesn't have, I guess in modern terminology, she doesn't have the right to give consent, that only her male relatives do. So that's the question. If you saw the opening statement in Harvey Fields this week, he quotes the person that he identifies as a British rabbi, Joseph H. Hertz, who died 1946, who called the story of Dinah a tale of dishonor, wild revenge, and indiscriminate slaughter. Now, how many people know anything about Joseph Hertz? Anybody? Bernie? Cy? Steve?
No.
No. Well, so Joseph, so you all know that we have what we call a chumash, correct? And everybody knows that?
No.
Yes.
But Okay, so Liz is shaking her head no. So if you go to most synagogues, many synagogues, not ours, but many others, you will find in the pews a prayer book, and you'll also find a Chumash, which is the 5 books of the Torah, with a short commentary, and usually also the Haftorahs, the prophetic selections, which go with that week's Torah portion. We use a Chumash, and we have some copies of it, which is called Plaut, which is named after Gunther Plaut, a rabbi who came from Germany as a very young man and was rabbi for many years in Minnesota and then Toronto. And it's a 1-volume book with everything you need for synagogue readings. Not the prayer book, but the Torah and the Haftorah readings. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
Now, the one we use is called Plaut. They've redone it a second time. Some of his views have been edited out. For example, he was originally against homosexuality. He was against homosexuality, and they needed to get that out of the text, or out of the commentary. So they made a new version that took that out, and other things like that. And that's what we use. It's not terribly exciting, and we don't have copies for everybody, but that's our Chumash. The original 1-volume Chumash, the first one ever made in English, in Hebrew and English, was by this man, Joseph H. Hertz. He was American. He studied at the Jewish Theological Seminary, which later became conservative, but he studied there before it became conservative, when it was still, not exactly clear what it was, but it was basically Orthodox. And then he became chief rabbi of South Africa. And from there, he got promoted and became chief rabbi of the British Empire, when there was a British Empire. Okay, so we're going back whiles. I think the Palestinian Mandate was part of the British Empire, I guess. India certainly was, and many other countries. So he had a very good job. As part of that job, he decided that we needed, that the synagogues in the British Empire and elsewhere in the English-speaking world needed a 1-volume Bible for synagogue use. So he got together all these rabbis, and they made up a 1-volume work. We have a whole suitcase of them in the boardroom, which used to be used, I'm sure, years ago. I don't know if it was during Steve's days.
No,
Steve,
it was. Yes, it was. We actually had Torah study in the boardroom there, and we handed out the Tanakh, and that's what we used to study.
So my predecessor used the Hertz Chumash.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow, that's
It was
really
in
That's really shocking, because it's just so awful and it's so misleading that it's just. I guess you could fight with it all the time, but what Hertz did was he took modern scholarship and deliberately misquoted it to make it. And then he came up with arguments why the scholars were either wrong or why they agreed with him, which was a somewhat more traditional view. So he was very intellectually dishonest, but it's a fascinating book from a historical point of view, because you can see at that time what basically Orthodox rabbis were trying to do to fight against modern scholarship, which of course favored a scholarly view, which would be compatible with what we would call reform. So he'll quote all the scholars, or many of the scholars, but then he'll say they agree with me, or they're wrong because of this. So it's such a dated work that you wouldn't want to actually use it. And but it's fascinating, and there have been books about the Hertz Chumash showing all the things that he did and why he did them. Not only did he misquote everybody deliberately, but even his commentary was mostly written by other rabbis in the British Empire, but he refused to give them any acknowledgement. So he left the impression that he had done the whole book. So this is a guy that I don't really have a lot of respect for, but historically it's a very important book because it set out and it was used by everybody for a long time because it was or certainly the Orthodox and the conservative, because it was the only one volume Chumash available. And we see in our Friday night service this problem. We don't want to put out the plowed Chumash because we don't have enough. We don't want to bother making photocopies of what I'm going to read. So people are sitting there and they don't have a copy of the Torah text. And that's not really a good thing. So it's an issue that we're certainly trying to deal with in our own way. Now, the way that I deal with it basically is by translating the text so that people can hear from me what the Hebrew says. But that's not ideal because my translation is very rough, and it would be nice if people had the text in front of them and they could take it home and so forth. Okay, comments or questions about Hertz or about anything before we start this week's reading,
Just
or
quickly,
about the concept of rape in the Bible or anything like that? Evelyn.
I have a question. I do not have a corrected copy of what the schedule of reading is, and I had page 75 and 76 Vayetzi for today, and I didn't realize that we were studying something else. So is it possible for someone to get me the corrected
Yes,
schedule?
Me too.
I will send it to you.
Thank
Me
you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay. And Steve also sent out the actual scan this week.
Right,
So
right.
even
So it
without
should
the
have-
schedule,
Should have it on in your email from Tuesday and Sunday. But I'll make sure, Evelyn, you get it.
Marcia too.
Marcia too? Okay. Now I did send you the
Yeah,
other copy.
but the Excel, like, open, like we talked about before.
Okay, I know. Okay. Yes, Richard.
okay. Okay, back to my question. Any comments on Hertz?
I do.
Richard has his question.
One comment. I
Richard.
see in the texts that I have, I finally got the Torah commentary of 3 volumes, and I'm reading on page 87, the rape of Diana.
Dina.
Hertz. This is the Hertz we're talking about?
Correct. And there's a little
So in other
picture.
words, when we look at these things, we are looking at a very dishonest man who wrote these so-called scholar things to put his view, and so he misinterpreted stuff on purpose.
That's my interpretation, Richard. Not everyone may agree with that. So I'm just giving, I didn't make those comments in the spirit of, being objective.
Right.
I'm trying to be provocative in a little bit. So I'm giving you my view, and I'm hoping that you will look up Hertz elsewhere, and you'll come back to me next week and say, what the rabbi said about Hertz is blasphemy and slander. This is a very distinguished British rabbi. And how could you say that about him?
Well, he's Orthodox, correct?
He was Orthodox. He died in 1946.
Right. So we're really talking about the Orthodox ideas. He's changing things around for his view of orthodoxy. Okay.
And what is really fascinating is how the Orthodox have changed. The Orthodox today don't do this. So Hertz wanted to pretend to engage with scholarship. So he would engage with the biblical scholars of his time and either say they agreed with him when they didn't, or say that they were wrong when they weren't. Today, the Orthodox ignore scholarship. So they don't say anything about scholarship. They just stick to the traditional texts and they completely avoid it. So Hertz's engagement in it in some ways could be seen as a liberal thing, even though he didn't engage with it in an honest way, according to my feelings.
Okay,
if that makes sense. So if we would talk to the Chabad rabbi in Glendale, for example, who's a very sweet guy, he will refuse to engage with any of these ideas that come from scholars. So he'll say, that's not my thing. I stick to the true Torah interpretations.
So,
And that's why Hertz is no longer used in any of the Orthodox synagogues either. So he's been abandoned by the conservative and he's been abandoned by the Orthodox for opposite reasons. The conservative wanted something more, sincerely scholarly, and the Orthodox wanted something that would not mention any of these scholars. So the world has changed intellectually tremendously. Richard, comment, return? Okay.
maybe we're becoming more honest. We're an Orthodox is not trying to turn the scholars' opinions around. Instead, the Orthodox are just saying, we feel the Bible is the Bible. It's immutable. It's something that Moses gave to all the people, and it's never changed, and you can't change interpretation. Of course, how do you interpret it? That's the point.
Oh, well, that's the point. Yes. So,
Everybody
and
has
that's
a different interpretation. I mean, I read this thing twice over because I was fascinated, particularly by the fact of the murder after Diane was raped, and particularly the guy who said, I'm going to marry her. I want to marry her. And instead,
and that's why some people feel that it wasn't a forcible rape, it was a consensual sex, but because Shechem had not gotten permission from her male relatives.
And he wasn't circumcised. Yeah.
All right, bro. Well, he wasn't, but he didn't have permission.
Right.
So was it forcible or not? That's the question. I mean, for me, that makes a difference. For them at that time, it didn't make a difference.
Right. And we're talking about 3,000 years ago.
Well, yeah. Yeah, very different culture. Okay, other people, Nan, Natalie, Liz, yes, Pam, and then Minya.
Rabbi, where did you see that you thought that she did this willingly? I didn't get that from the text.
Well, that's just my impression from, years and years of reading this from the Torah itself. If you read just the Torah text without Harvey Field's commentary, there's nothing that says or suggests that, that he slammed her down and pulled off her clothes and anything like that. It's not mentioned whether it was forcible or not. But the fact that he then tells his father that he's in love with the girl and wants to marry her, to me, that suggests that this was a relationship. It was an illicit relationship, but it was a relationship. And he met her at a party and he starts dating her and they had sex and he wants to marry her. Not that he saw her in a dark street and he grabbed her and hit her over the head. Because if it was a rape in a dark alley, why would he then say he wants to marry her? Pam, am I being an anti-feminist barbarian?
I'm declining further comment. I'd like to hear from others.
Oh,
I think,
boy, I'm going to get in big trouble today. Minya.
I just wanted to know, when you mentioned they didn't get permission, who was it that had to get permission from whom, or did I miss that?
Well, in this culture, you'd have to get permission from the girl's male relatives. So in order to marry her, and you wouldn't be able to have sex with her before marriage. And so these two things were not done properly. So if he saw Dina at a party and he wanted to marry her, he would then have to go to his father and say to his father, go to the male relatives, the father and the older brothers of this girl, and see if you can make a shidduch for me, and we'll get married. And that was done, but only after the fact.
which it should have been done before the fact if they would see.
That's my interpretation, but Pam seems to have very grave doubts about what I'm saying. And I'm not an expert on ancient courtship 3,000 years ago, as Richard says. I don't know what was done or what could have done, but there's nothing in the biblical text that says he forcibly raped her. There's also nothing that says that she consensually had sex with him. So I don't know. Who's next? Marcia, Bernie, Cy, Steve,
As an aside,
Marcia.
wasn't this the story, Anita Diamond's book, The Red Tent? Wasn't this?
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't remember. It was so long ago.
It was, yes.
But yeah.
Yes. So, and the reason that Anita Diamond picked this story is she said there was nothing from Dina's perspective. So, we're talking about Dina and what happened to Dina, but nothing about Dina. What did she feel? What did she do? What did she want? What happened from her point of view? Telling stories from different vantage points is very different. There was a movie, I think, quite a few years ago called Vantage Point, where there was a terrorist attack among European or world leaders in Spain. A big thing was blown up, and they show it. The movie goes from 4 or 5 different people's vantage points, and you see that, you learn more about what actually happened by watching, 4 or 5 different people's point of views. Very different, depending on what you knew and where you were standing and what you thought and so forth. So having Dina's viewpoint, but other women in the Torah do have their viewpoints expressed, for better or worse. Nan? Yes, Evelyn.
I'm curious as to the sentence that her brothers refused. Was the father no longer present? And it was the brothers who were considered the authoritative male relatives?
Correct.
Is that it? In other words, it was the brothers who were the ones who had to give consent.
In this particular case, if the father's not available, then the older brothers would assume that role of the oldest male relative. Bernie.
I thought I read here that they went behind Jacob's back to do all of this. That he was
Say
around.
again?
That the brothers went behind Jacob's back to do this. He was still around. He just was bypassed.
Yes. And so there was a lot of problems here in communications, that that Shechem's father did not ask permission in time, and there was anger already, and then the brothers, deceived their father and took control of the situation when it wasn't really their place. So there were legal issues, and confusion and lack of communication, some of which may have been deliberate or was deliberate. And the result was, I think, tragedy for everyone, if I'm right. And if it was more of a Romeo and Juliet situation rather than a forcible rape. But that's impossible to, we only have the text that we have. So we don't know. But I'm not inclined to agree with Hirsch, which is why I started out with my character assassination of him. And since it's on tape and his heirs may sue me, let me just say, I think he's a nice guy. He was probably a very nice guy.
Richard has his hand up.
Richard.
If I remember right, the inhabitants of Shlem or his cohorts were willing to sacrifice by having circumcisions so that he can get married. That is a big deal. And not only that, but if we look forward into the Bible, these are the same group of people who take Joseph and put him into bondage and then tell his father that he died. These are an unscrupulous bunch of people.
Hmm.
This is my feeling about them. The only one who's in the whole group is Joseph and maybe Diane. But these people are just unscrupulous, you know.
And that's what makes Torah study so much fun, is you're dealing with real people
Yeah.
who are not portrayed as saints by any means. Natalie?
I didn't have my hands up.
No, I know, but
Okay, that's
you've
okay.
you've been quiet this morning, so we figured.
Oh,
No, okay, Evelyn.
okay, that was part of the question that I had asked. Jacob was still head of the tribe, and yet you had these brothers who felt as if, or thought that perhaps they could usurp their father and take control of situations that by right he should have been the one who had the final say. And then, of course, when Jacob hears what they have done, he said to them, "You have made trouble for me." And so,
Right.
obviously, the brothers were contentious and, as Richard said, big troublemakers. They were
Yes.
unscrupulous and looking for power themselves, basically.
And hotheads who wanted to kill. Yes. I mean, I guess though, they felt that they had been wronged, right? This guy had had sex with their sister without permission. That is for them a very serious violation of tribal expectations. There were two ways to handle it. You could overlook it or ask for some sort of compensation and try to build a union. This group wants to merge basically into your tribe. They're going to get circumcised. They're willing to now follow your religion. Or you can try to get revenge and refuse to accept them. I mean, I guess it depends how serious you see this violation and whether you think a merger would be beneficial. You know, yes, Natalie.
Yeah, if they were such unscrupulous people, we don't really know what their motives were. We don't really know how much they cared about their sister. Maybe this whole thing initiated what they really were hoping for, and that's to destroy.
It's really hard to know people's motives in this case. Yes. I tend to, I tend to have a more open perspective here. And I think what Dina's brothers did was terrible, but not everyone may agree with me. A lot of it depends on how you interpret the original event.
Don has his hand up and then Pam.
You know, we're seeing these kind of things even now in the modern day, particularly with immigrants who come from the Arab lands, where the girls particularly are told they have to obey their fathers and their mothers. And if they do not, if they become Americanized and start going out and dancing, having short skirts, there's been instances where the father or the parents or the sibs have killed their sibs and ended up the consequences in jail because of it.
Right. Every few years,
Pakistan, they just say, "Oh, it's okay."
No, I think in Pakistan, the federal government tries to punish people like that too. In fact, there was a case like that in Pakistan a few days ago, and they killed this couple was dancing, a teenage couple were dancing, and there was a video, and the tribal elders convicted the two teenagers, a boy and a girl, to death. And they asked each family to kill them. And the family of the girl shot the girl and killed her. And the federal police came in and they were able to rescue the boy before his family could carry out the sentence. So I think the federal government in Pakistan is trying to be a little more enlightened.
Yeah, but the family won't be prosecuted, particularly if it's in a tribal area.
Well, the federal government said that they said they're going to try to prosecute.
Right. We'll see what happens.
I'm not.
But
I'm
anyway,
not.
we're digressing
not-
from 3,000 years ago.
I'm not defending the Pakistani federal government, but I think in this case they were doing the right thing as much as they could. But you know, how much can you do? Okay, who was next?
Cy,
Cy and then Bernie.
Oh,
Okay,
my
Cy,
thought was,
Pam, and then Bernie.
how important really are all these incidents, these stories, to the relationship of the people to God? I mean, there are so many varied stories, but when I hear them, they make sense, but they don't make any sense in the overall picture of God and the people.
All right. That's a good question, a good comment. I would say that this story probably has very little to do with the religion today. And much of the Bible has very little to do with the religion today. I mean, biblical culture is pre-Judaism. It's Israelite religion. It's different. But it's part of our culture, not just our Jewish culture, but the Western culture. You know, when I have dialogues with Christians, they know these stories just like we do. And it's interesting. So, but I'd say today is more about, an ancient story in the Bible rather than I don't know that we'll come away with this with a new appreciation for contemporary Jewish practices, for why you should attend Friday night services, or why you should put up a mezuzah, or why you should be. But in general, I guess it talks about human relations. How do you deal with people in a complex situation? Something has happened, which is bad. We're not sure exactly why it's bad, but it's bad. What do you do? How do you negotiate between groups? I mean, can you negotiate between groups? In this case, it appears that this other group is very flexible and willing to make compromises for peace and for solidarity and for unity. And it's the children of Jacob who are not, but sometimes it's the other way around. And so I think you can learn a lot about group dynamics and about conflict resolution. It's an ancient case study in conflict resolution. Cy, if you and I, we can do a master's degree in conflict resolution together if you like. We can do it online.
Okay.
Okay, Pam.
Rabbi, I was wondering, was Jacob really old at this point in the Torah? Because that's why the sons felt they could go around him.
He was getting old. Yeah, I don't know exactly how old he was, but clearly the sons are adults and they feel it's time to push Pa out of the power, and they're ready. It's kind of like when Prince Charles was prince and the queen, she was queen for like 400 years. And I felt bad for him. This is a guy that he's waiting to take his job. I mean, his job only starts when his mother dies, or, she could have retired, when she turned like 70, and she could have lived in Sun City for like 40 years, but she wouldn't. She kept her job until she died at whatever, 100 and something. I mean, was that really necessary? I mean, and even when she's dying and they're she has to technically appoint that new prime minister that lasted there for like 3 minutes, and she wouldn't let her son even do that. She could have said, okay, we'll make an excuse that I'm too sick and you can start doing the king sort of things while I'm still alive. No, she said, it's my job. I'm doing it. When I'm dead, then you can do it. And now William has the same trouble. He's 35, 38 years old, and he's got to just sit there and look pretty until his father dies. And his father just started the job and he's 70 years old. His father's not going to retire. He's done it for like 6 months. So they wanted, sure. So Jacob, they felt Jacob has been doing this for a while. It's time for us. And sometimes the younger generation doesn't make such good decisions, which is part of the reason why the older generation doesn't want to turn things over to them.
And sometimes they make better decisions.
Who said that?
Natalie,
I mean, those people make better decisions than those young people, or vice versa?
All right, Liz, do you want to step in here as a representative of the younger generation? Maybe not the youngest, but younger.
I don't know. This whole conversation has gone in a completely different way than I was thinking. So
How were you say? What were you
I don't really
expecting?
know what to say. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to, or the conversation to be whether the story was actually true, you know, whether she was actually raped. I was expecting it to be more of a discussion on you know, rape and maybe how people should be punished, or
This is the younger generation talking.
Yes.
Now, if it was really rape in the sense of an attack, then the penalty in the Torah might be death. You know, if an Israelite did something like that. So I think that for an actual rape, the penalty would be a death penalty. And now this is somebody from outside the tribe who's technically not bound by any of the Israelite laws. And so you have a problem there as well. Yes. Who was next? Or Liz, do you want to respond again?
Marcia.
Liz? No? Okay. Marcia?
You sure, Liz? But it was part of it is the manner of the death. It was so horrific. They didn't take it to court, you know, and have him punished, or probably it would have been stoning or something like that if they came to that. But they didn't even get to that point. They just took it upon themselves to go in there and, you know, horribly kill these people.
So going back to Sai's question, what can we learn from this? It's also that there's a need for a justice system. You know, now I'm thinking that it doesn't matter in Israel, from the brother's point of view, it doesn't matter whether the girl, Dina, gave consent or not. Doesn't matter whether she sees him as a boyfriend or whether it was a forcible rape. In either case, since any sex act was done without the permission of her male relatives, this is rape in a biblical sense. Therefore, he needs to be punished. From my modern eyes, it just seems, you know, ridiculously harsh. But then they couldn't just take him. He was the son of the king of this other group, so they had to trick them in order to be able to kill them all. So so in their minds, the ends justify the means. This guy has to die. Therefore, the only way for him to die is to make this pretend treaty and wait till they're recovering from circumcisions and then go in and kill them. And that's justice. So, but if it was another situation, if this guy really had done something awful, horrible, and killed hundreds of people, then would lying to them and getting them to circumcise themselves and then killing them all, do the ends justify the means in this or another situation? Okay, Bernie, I think wanted to talk.
No? Okay.
So
Marcia?
does this matter of deceit and murder that they committed on these guys, that's not showing that they are particularly ready for leadership of the tribe of Israel if they came in there and just did this horrible thing. I mean, this is, I always seem to think that it's a terrible thing to say, but that people in the those countries and that part of the world seem to have very explosive temperaments, and they seem to rush to judgment. I mean, I remember seeing it in Israel, people getting into fights over nothing, and then turning around and walking away like nothing happened. There's a lot of, hostility, open hostility like that, but it doesn't show that they're ready to be leaders if this is how they responded.
Well, but in another sense, they're very much leaders. They took it upon themselves to do something very dramatic without consulting with their father or their sister or anybody. So it may be bad leadership, but it was leadership. Minya, Pam, Bernie. Okay, Bernie.
One could make a case that that this sort of behavior is going on in Israel right now.
Absolutely.
That Netanyahu responded the same way that the brothers did, go in and kill a whole bunch of innocent people to get revenge.
Marcia?
No, I didn't. I just.
Minya?
I'm going to just go off and continue where I thought Bernie was going, in that I recently read an article in the Washington Post about the rapes in Israel, in Gaza, because of Hamas, and how they're treating young women. They rape them and then they kill them immediately. And when we're talking about rape, even going back 3,000 years, as Richard said, it just seems that, I don't know how to put it. Men in, I don't know, I have to think of the, let me pass and I'll come back after I decide how to phrase it. Because we're dealing with modern times with the same issue of rape, but in this case, it's really horrific, where then the person dies too. So I'll back off until I figure out the right words that I wanted to use.
Okay. Pam?
Yeah.
Evelyn?
The concept of using rape in modern warfare has been used for dozens and dozens of years in Africa, when you have all of these militaristic groups taking over the country and doing the same thing. It is considered part of the technique of warfare today, and it's their idea of how they subdue and subjugate the general populace. This has always been true. If you read history, but going back long ago, rape has always been part of the conquest, per se. Whether they actually killed the women afterward depends upon the culture. But in most cases, though, in today's world, it's rape and kill and show no mercy. And for those who survive, they live in terror as a result. And this is exactly what the conquerors intend for them. So this is part and parcel of today's world. It's not something that is new, per se.
So rape in the context of war is very different than rape that occurs downtown Phoenix, or it's some.
In a sense, yes. The result may be the same in terms of trauma for the woman if she survives, or the families that are left behind. But again, the concept of it is, when you're conquering a people, you take advantage of that. And of course, for those conquerors, for the men who are revved up, it is a physiologically normal process. And so they release their own tensions that way as well.
Minya and then Marcia.
I just want to follow up with what Evelyn said. I realize that it goes way back. You can look at how Japan treated women during World War II, how they had so-called comfort places where men could go and rape women all day long if they wanted to. So when I talk about contemporary, I realize that you could go back to World War II, you could go further back, but the one I'm more familiar with from the things I've read is Japan and the way they treated the Chinese people during the rape.
And there's also, I just read this week that there's a place called the Darien Gap in Panama, and the migrants trying to make their way from South America to the U.S. Yeah, there's gangs there that demand payment. And if women don't have money to pay, they have rape tents, quote unquote, where they will rape them if they refuse to pay, or they either refuse to pay or cannot pay.
And that's not even war. That's just
that's
control. That's just control of that area so that people will have to pay them something to go through.
Marcia.
In a lot of cases, I think it's a matter of I sound like a total feminist, but a matter of male dominance, in that the women are really, in many of these societies, really just chattel. They're owned by the men. And so if they're violated, it's a smack in the face to the men. It's not, they don't care what's happening to the women. It's a matter of demeaning the men's property, basically. And so I think that's a lot of what's happens in Gaza, and it happens in war a lot because it can, basically, and it's just people taking advantage of somebody who's weaker than them to offend their enemies and say, see what I can do to your property, what I can do to your women, and we don't care. You know, it's you know, and then if a woman would fight back, oftentimes she's the one that gets blamed for it, you know. So.
Now in the text, Harvey Fields, who seems to accept Hertz's interpretation, remember that this whole commentary was written 40 years ago or more. He says at the end of the paragraph on the right-hand side of the page, who was really responsible for this incident? Dinah, who went out socializing without a chaperone, or Shechem, who forced himself upon her? I mean, this makes certain assumptions about what happened, but it hints at that Dinah went out with her chaperone maybe because she wanted to have a sexual encounter with Shechem. That would, because normally, apparently, according to Harvey Fields, who's basing himself on Joseph Hertz, who may or may not know the customs of the time, that single women went out with a chaperone, and that would make sense, you know, based on what we think we know about that time. So, but if Dinah wanted to have sex with her boyfriend from a different tribe, you know, surely she should have realized the tremendous conflict that this is going to generate. You know, but if she was an adolescent girl, maybe she didn't think that far ahead. Also, she probably didn't think that her brothers would make the decision what to do. She thought her father would, and that he would be reasonable and would then allow them to get married. I'm just speculating here. Shirley, Natalie, Nan, Richard?
Steve.
Your guess is as good as anybody else, because the text is very vague about how it happened, why it happened. And as you say about if it was a rape or was it really consensual, the text doesn't show that at all.
Okay, Steve?
Well, in the box on page 88, where it says who is to blame, it states that the woman should not show herself in the street wearing contemptuous jewelry, because that's what Dinah did. She wore jewelry, and jewelry is given to women for purpose adorning herself in her own house for her husband. It wouldn't be wrong to set a stumbling block even before a righteous man, and certainly before people who are the outlook for the opportunity to sin. So, I think it was a combination of both things.
That's terrible.
Yeah,
Okay, hold on. Women want to respond to this. Remember, this is from the Talmud 2,000 years ago. Mentalities have changed. Who was first? Pam, Evelyn, and Marcia, in that order.
Yes, because I'm really upset. I mean, this whole concept that women asked for it. They
yeah,
had it then, they still have it now.
yeah.
That the woman asked for it because she didn't do this, she didn't do that. Even though the fact that she was just, assaulted, but she must have asked for it.
Yeah.
And I
So
had a grandmother who used to say that, you girls have to be careful, but we have to get away from that.
well, we had a big conflict right here in Torah study, I think 2 years ago, over this very point.
Yes, yes.
Over this very
Yes,
point, with two people that are, neither one is still with us from in our group.
You got rid of them.
Yes.
No, they left. They left.
They left.
They left of their own, on their own volition, but they had this exact same, I don't know if it was about this story or not, but it was on this exact point. But clearly the Talmud was writing 2,000 years ago, and it of course depends on the culture, but in our culture, we allow women to wear whatever they like, and that's certainly not an excuse for men to rape anybody. Here, they're also talking about, voluntary sex. They don't differentiate as much as we might between voluntary and involuntary because, sex outside of the permitted contexts are not allowed. Okay, so Pam spoke, Evelyn, and then Marcia.
I was just going to say, there wasn't that many years ago when women were wearing mini skirts and tank tops. And if the woman was accosted or harmed in any way, even the newspapers would say, oh, she deserved it because she was dressing provocatively and enticing men. And so, but now being partially unclothed seems to be the norm. So that doesn't seem to hold true quite as much as it did even a few years ago. But I'm thinking as far back as even, well, let's say the Regency period, women were not allowed to go out unaccompanied. In other words, if it was a single woman, she was expected to have some sort of a male escort. If she was wealthy, then she had a groom who the horses or whatever, or someone had to accompany her, at least a maid at any rate. And even then, she might not necessarily be safe as such. So, yeah, unfortunately, women have always had to be wary because there is always danger going out alone. Yet I will say this much about World War II. During World War II, we had a brownout in the New York City area, which meant that the lights were dimmed to discourage the potential enemy, such as planes or ships, from knowing exactly where they were located. They didn't have the type of technology that they do today. I would walk through the city, going to the movies, going to the library at night as a teenager, and never had to worry at all about being accosted. Not once during that entire period what was I ever in any difficulty whatsoever. Maybe it was my neighborhood, which was a good one, but at the same time, I think it was a period of time when women were not quite as apprehensive about being possibly accosted as they are in other areas or in different times. So,
and of course, today people of all genders are worried about being attacked on the streets, right? So there's muggers, robbers, killers that kill men as well as women, and so we all have to be more careful than we used to. And so this is a new era where things are, but I think being raped or even killed on the streets by a random criminal is different than what we're talking about here, where there's like a war between two tribes, and the rape and murders are part of a war thing. It says a few of the people spoke about how that is it's a different thing. Okay, Marcia, over to you.
So, and then Cy after me. So, I'm thinking about Orthodoxy, which still has people covered up to their necks and down the arms. And, you know, when you go to Israel, you have to wrap yourself in cloths so that you don't go down to the Western Wall with your body exposed in the wrong places. And because if you are not dressed appropriately, apparently, you're causing all these men to have horrible thoughts about what they're going to do to you, you know.
Well, it's not horrible thoughts. I mean, being attracted sexually is a perfectly nice thing, isn't it?
But why can't men control themselves? What?
Well, that's a different thing. You can look, but you can't touch, I guess, is the expression, right? So, is there anything wrong with sexual attraction that, you know, you want a society where people can dress nice and look at each other and smile and flirt and be attracted to one another? No?
Well, then why are the Orthodox saying no?
Well, I'm a counter thinker here on a number of things, but I think it's a good
Playing the
thing.
devil's advocate here.
No, I'm not. I think it's a good thing for men and women to dress in a way that they're attracted to each other. What's wrong with that's
not to the point of assault.
well, that's a totally different thing, right? I mean, why you see somebody pretty, you don't. I don't think I want to assault that person. That's ridiculous. But if everyone covers up and pretends to be very asexual, then nobody's going to ever have sex. And
that's why they have arranged marriages in Orthodoxy, because nobody knows what's going on under those layers of clothing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I guess that's why I'm not ultra-Orthodox. But you'll check back when I retire, maybe I'll become ultra-Orthodox, and you say, we can't believe it. Our Rabbi Emeritus is living in Mea Shearim, and he's become ultra-Orthodox, and we're playing back the old tapes from Torah study, and it's just totally against what he was saying then. Just shocking. Pam.
We have video that we can hold against you in your future life.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Cy, and then Evelyn, and then I want to start on page 88 on the left-hand bottom corner.
What I want to ask is this, Rabbi. In any of these crimes that are committed in the Bible, they invariably want to kill the individual who committed the crime. It's always killing him. And I wonder, doesn't anybody get 30 days or 60 days or 90 days in jail? I mean, why do they always have to be killed?
Well, in the Talmud, I'm going back to page 87 now. The Talmud is, of course, written many hundreds of years after the Bible. And it says there at the bottom of page 87, right-hand side, that it says defining rape. Laws defining rape usually indicate that the crime must involve sexual intercourse by force and against the will of the woman. The penalty for rape within the Torah, which is not really what he's talking about, the penalty for rape is compensation to the family for the disgrace and marriage to the victim without the opportunity for divorce. Later, the rabbis added the payment of compensation for pain inflicted on the woman during the rape. So this is not something that we would consider doing today. You're not going to force the woman to marry her rapist. That would be ridiculous. So things have changed, 180 degrees in the last.
Except we're forcing women to have the babies of the people who raped them.
Okay, well, so things haven't changed as much as you might think.
Yeah.
Yes, Evelyn.
I wanted to sort of supplement what Marcia had said apropos of the Orthodox. It seems the Orthodox are aware of human sexuality and the drives, particularly of teenagers, that are strong. And so they deny the sexuality while the youngsters growing up. Then when they reach their later teen years, they encourage them to get married very early. In other words, it's not uncommon for a girl of 17 or 18 and being Orthodox to be married off to a young boy of 20 or 21. And they realize that the sexual drive is so strong, better they should get married than to sleep around or have sexual relations with people that they don't approve of. So they arrange the marriage, the kids get married, start knocking out kids, and the grandparents are very happy about the whole thing. So this is what, to me, modern Orthodoxy is.
All right, so every system, every societal system has its pluses and minuses. Today, we have no societal direction, so people can do whatever they want, which is good and it's bad. You know, anybody dealing with an adolescent now and trying to guide them, Liz, I guess you're the only one. What are you trying to tell to your son?
He will not talk about it, about you know, being interested in girls or possibly dating or anything. I think the only one who's able to get him to talk about it all is my brother. You know, when I've tried to bring it up, he clearly feels very uncomfortable and does not want to talk.
How old is he,
What a
Liz?
surprise.
16.
16.
Are there lessons you would like to, you know, impart to him? I mean, is there any framework that you feel is beneficial that, you know, or do you feel that everything is up to him and there's no rules or right way or better way?
No, I mean, I feel that at his age, he, you know, he'll be 17 next month. It would be completely appropriate for him to date someone. I would be more than happy if he wanted to spend time with someone. You know, and have a girlfriend. I mean, yeah, I think that would be completely appropriate at his age.
Is there anything you would not want him to do, or that you would? I mean, would he, if he had 2 girlfriends or 3 girlfriends, or, you know, I mean, you know, is there any kind of framework that you would like him or people in his generation to maintain, or do you think they have to make their own rules?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to tell him, like, morals regarding that yeah, you should have one girlfriend at a time. It's, you know, it's dishonest otherwise, unless they know about each other and don't care. I mean, from what I hear, a lot of young people do things differently nowadays. Some people say you know, they hardly even date anymore, but I mean, I hope that from seeing our marriage, you know, he realizes that, you know, it's appropriate to have one person. Yeah, I mean, I just haven't been able to talk to him much about it because he really just doesn't want to talk about it. And like I said, hasn't been, I mean, I don't know if he does talk to girls at school. That would be news to me, but
This is what is it called today when they want to have a marriage or a permanent relationship with more than one person? What is that called? There's a term for that now.
Polygamy?
Well, they use a different term.
Polyamory.
Open marriage?
Thank you. Thank you, Bernie. Polyamory.
An
And,
open
you know,
marriage.
Yeah, and I see in the newspapers articles, and they have one guy and three women, or one woman and three guys, and they all say we're, unfit. You can't legally marry that because that would be a crime. But they basically see themselves as in a marriage, but it's not one man and one woman; it's a group. And
Bernie, you're scaring me that you know this.
I knew it too. I just didn't remember the term.
Oh, my
But yeah, I mean,
This is so educational.
It is, it is.
Is it gonna help you, Marcia?
It's training one husband. Who would want more than one?
no, apparently some people do. So it's of course voluntary, but neither the Bible nor the Talmud has this attitude. They feel these are the rules and you have to stick by these rules. All right, down to the bottom of page 88 on the left-hand side, very last paragraph. Some interpret or the question faced by Jacob and his sons. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
It's opposite where it says Maimonides and shows a little picture of Maimonides on the left-hand column and Maimonides on the right-hand column. Page 88 on the bottom. The question faced by Jacob and his sons was how to deal with such violence. Were they to sit by idly and do nothing? Were they to take revenge? Answer, the violence of Shechem's act with a massacre of his community. Some interpreters argue that Simon and Levi were justified in their revenge. Their sister had been treated, quote unquote, as public property. Shechem used her with no regard to her feelings, her rights, or her dignity. This is all a huge assumption. We have no real knowledge that any of that was true. He forced himself upon her again. I don't think that's what happened. And she would live with the terrible memories throughout her life. Rabbi Bechaya comments that the people of Shechem were among the world's greatest thieves and liars. No one could trust them. Although they promised to live at peace with Jacob and his sons, actually, as soon as they healed from their circumcisions, they planned to kill all of them. What Simon and Levi did, Rabbi Bechaya says, was an act of self-defense, not of revenge. And that comes from the Tzena, which, as you know from previously, is a Yiddish commentary on the Torah that was produced for women in Eastern Europe. Okay, well, comments, Bernie?
Yeah, I have a question. This makes no sense to me, this paragraph. If they planned to kill all the Israelites after they healed from the circumcision, why would they go through the circumcision in the first place?
Exactly.
Thank you. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But Rabbi Bechaya, you have to understand, he wants to defend these two gentlemen at all costs. So what appears to be a terrible crime, and which is starting with a religious act and then using that to murder these people, he wants to turn it around and say it was a justifiable defense. But I agree with you, Bernie.
Richard has his hand up.
Richard?
I have a lot of questions. Number one is with Diana. Supposedly she was wearing jewelry. I don't see in the text where she Torah where she was wearing jewelry. But
No,
that
well,
her clothes wasn't mentioned. And where is in the text is it mentioned that this tribe, Shlem's tribe, were vicious thieves? Nothing on
right.
anything. I mean, people are making this up for justification. It's like I see, to bring back to the present, the war that's going on between Israel and Hamas. People on both sides are justifying cruelty beyond belief. So it's human nature to justify what we're doing, even if others consider it wrong.
Now, on a general level, when an Orthodox rabbinic Jew studies the Torah, they don't study the Torah, they studied rabbinic understanding or understandings of the Torah. So the things that you're like me, you differentiate between what's actually in the Bible and what the rabbis writing 1,000 years later said about what was written in the Bible. But rabbinic Jews, Orthodox rabbinic Jews, do not make that differentiation. What the rabbi said is in the Torah is what's in the Torah.
Even
Full
if it
stop.
isn't. Even if it isn't.
Right. Well, even if you and I don't see it, they say it's there, even if it's not explicit. Natalie.
What you just said, I don't quite understand. So if there are many different rabbis who are saying whatever they're saying for whatever reasons, and then those are the people that instead of the Bible that people are following, how do they know who to follow? And at different times, different rabbis say different things, different eras. I don't understand
Well,
what
I
the
think
Orthodox
in
do.
rabbinic exegesis of the Torah, there's
Okay.
a certain discourse which is acceptable. So there can be differences between Rashi and Rashbam on what a text means, but there's a certain parameters. So for us, and there's certain, and anything beyond those parameters is not acceptable. So there are legitimate differences of opinions from an Orthodox rabbinic view, but then there's certain things that are beyond that and are not acceptable. So, so that would be my answer. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. So, so they don't follow what is in the Bible itself.
Not really, not always. So sometimes they just add to it, but sometimes they change it.
Okay.
And we'll come
So
up
that's
with certain.
so then
we'll come up,
if that's the case, then and they're not following in an orthodox in the sense, a strict kind of following, then maybe they're more liberal.
yes. So in a sense, rabbinic Jews are not fundamentalists. So Orthodox Jews are not fundamentalists. So a fundamentalist Christian takes the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, according to their terminology, and believes what exactly is written in those scriptures. No Jews do that. The most Orthodox Jew does not do that because the rabbis interpreted things in a very non-literal way. But today, Orthodox Jews will follow rabbinic interpretations with an S, and they will not deviate from things that were acceptable to the rabbis of the Talmud. So that's not to say that Orthodox Jews are very liberal, but their original interpretations were not literal. So being liberal and literal are different. Evelyn.
Thank you.
I have a question about Rambam and Rashbaum, two different individuals, I presume. Rambam
Yes.
was Maimonides. Who was Rashbaum?
Rashbam was a slightly later biblical commentator who argued with Rashi and was related to Rashi, actually. So you can have Rashbam disagreeing with Rashi, and that's considered legitimate in medieval Jewish exegesis. But modern interpretations that say, well, this text and that text were written by different people, that's completely unacceptable in Orthodox discourse. So there's certain limits. Okay, Nan, you've been very quiet today. Shirley? Okay, so I'm going to continue there on the right side of page 88.
Rabbi
Yes.
still has her hand up. Pam?
Rabbi, do Orthodox rabbis think that the average Jewish member of their congregation doesn't understand the Torah unless the rabbi tells them how to understand the Torah?
Well, I think in Orthodoxy that part of your job is to understand what the Orthodox rabbis how the Orthodox rabbis interpret things. The interpretation is the religion.
So it sounds like the congregant doesn't have a lot of say in what they want to.
The rabbis don't either. A rabbi today would have to follow what's in the Talmud. But there's still some flexibility. And as I said, it's not a literal interpretation of the Bible by any means. But for example, to cite what we talked about before, it says in the Torah 3 times, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. That presumably is a literal thing in the Bible, but it's meant as a humanitarian thing, I would think. But the rabbis in the Talmud say, no, it has to do with not eating milk with meat. So you cannot, that's in the Talmud. And if I was an Orthodox rabbi, I can't say, no, it's not to do with eating milk with meat. It's okay to eat milk with meat. Now, if I said as an Orthodox rabbi, you shouldn't eat milk with meat, but it's based on another a sentence in scripture somewhere else that has no basis in Talmudic discourse, that too, even though I might be practicing the same way as the other Orthodox rabbis, that would be outside of the acceptable realm, because I'm giving a reason. I'm quoting in the biblical verse for a practice that nobody else quoted before. You can't just do that. You have to follow precedent in the Talmud. Evelyn.
In today's society, the way that the Orthodox and conservatives subvert that particular rule is by using almond milk or soy milk or cashew milk, and therefore they are mixing dairy, but it's vegetarian, quote, dairy, and so they will make a sauce or cook something that is meat with the milk, and that's how they get away with it and change the rules in a sense. Theoretically, they're being accurate, and yet at the same time, they're changing the intent of of it, and so it's being subverted in a sense.
Okay, let's go down to the very last page, where we have on the right side in his commentary Nachmanides. Below the box.
Got it.
You found it?
Yes, starts with Wiseman's opinion.
It's the box says like a troop of murdering bandits. I'll start with the box on 89, right hand column. Like a troop of murdering bandits. The rabbis of the Midrash taught, as bandits sit in the road, murder people and seize their wealth, so did Simon and Levi act in Shechem. So you see there that within the rabbinic literature, there's tremendous disagreement. Some people support Simon and Levi and go out of their way, as Bernie pointed out, to make ridiculous things to support them, but others oppose them. So since it's in the Talmudic literature, it's acceptable. And I'm keeping reading. In his commentary, Nachmanides, who's different than Maimonides, also condemns Simon and Levi for their massacre of the people of Shechem. He disagrees with Maimonides. He argues that the failure of the people of Shechem to prosecute Shechem for raping Dinah is no justification for the brutality of Simon and Levi. So Nachmanides declares it was not the responsibility of Jacob and his sons to bring them to justice. Furthermore, Nachmanides speculates that had Simon and Levi not taken the law in their own hands, the people of Shechem, including Hamor and Shechem, might have lived alongside them as friends and as devoted followers of the one God. After all, they had willingly circumcised themselves. They would have chosen to believe in God. Thus, Simon and Levi killed them without cause, for the people had done them no evil at all. Comments? And then it's going to go on to say that my friend Joseph Hertz agrees with Nachmanides. So maybe Rabbi Hertz is not such a bad guy.
White group.
Yeah, well,
I agree too.
I think the fact that they were willing to be circumcised, which is no small thing considering they were adults, showed a willingness on their part to cooperate and join with them. And the fact that that they were murdered seems unjust, to say
Now,
the
for me, Evelyn, it makes a huge difference whether this was a voluntary relationship or whether Dina was raped against her will. If she was raped against her will, to me, in modern eyes, that's rape, and that's a terrible thing that you cannot make better. If it was a voluntary relationship, then the only crime was they didn't get permission ahead of time. So for me, that makes all the difference in the world. But for many of these thinkers, it may not be that important, because in the Bible times, if a woman was forcibly raped, they would force the man to marry the woman. Now, today, to force your rapist to marry you or to force the woman to marry your rapist would be unheard of. And I remember many years ago, there was a talk show. There was a woman who claimed to be raped, and the man served prison time. And then she said, no, it wasn't true. And they let him out. And then they went on a talk show. And the host said, why don't you give each other a hug? And they both looked horrified. And I don't know if anyone remembers that case, but I don't know if they ever figured out what actually happened. But I think it's very, very important to me. But in those days, maybe not so much. Okay, other comments? We're Richard, Liz, Minya,
I have
Steve.
my hand up. Okay,
Steve.
maybe Simone and Levy had thought of the Simone of the Shechem. They had alternative motives. Maybe they thought that the guys had alternative motives, even though they are after they were circumcised.
Of course. Yes. And so how much does that matter? Ulterior motives.
Well, I mean, if they're trying to defend their tribe, their people from slaughter, then they may have justified the means.
Okay. Minya, Pam,
Marcia has her hand up.
Marcia.
That next paragraph, it starts Rabbi Joseph Hertz, I think is important, because it talks about how Jacob felt about it.
Okay, do you want to read that, Marcia?
Okay. Rabbi Joseph H. Hertz agrees. He comments that the sons of Jacob certainly acted in a treacherous and godless manner, and Jacob did not forgive them to his dying day. Hertz reminds us in the blessing that Jacob gave on his deathbed to Simeon and Levi. He said, Simeon and Levi are a pair. Their weapon are tools of lawlessness. Let not my person be included in their council. Let not my being be counted in their assembly. For when angry they slay men, and when pleased they maim oxen. Cursed be their anger so fierce, and their wrath so relentless. Jacob's condemnation of Simeon and Levi for taking the law into their own hands, even to revenge the rape of their sister, seems clear enough. The answer to brute force, to violence, is not more violence, not the massacre of innocents. It is the pursuit of justice within the courts of society.
Well, what do you think?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's modern. Did they have courts back 3,000 years ago?
I think
At least in the Hebrew and tribal areas, were there courts? Probably not.
Not in that period.
Not in the sense of that we know courts is today.
I'm not sure of the period of the time, but didn't they have councils? And is this pre-Moses now?
Pre-Moses.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is about 3,000 years. Moses is about what, 1200 BC, I think. and this is about approximately, and this is about 3000 BC. Well, maybe between 2 and 3000 BC is the beginning of the Iron Age and the end of the Bronze Age, which would be about 3000 years ago.
Wow, long time ago.
Well,
Yeah, I was born just after that.
You aged well.
But
Thanks.
it's interesting how things really don't change so much over years, things like this still happen, right?
oh, because that's human nature, and history will always repeat itself. You know.
And I think that's what the Bible really is. For me, I look at it and I say, it's a history of a people, it's mythology, and it's human nature, what they're showing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the human nature isn't so good, isn't so nice.
Right.
Even at the very beginning with Adam and Eve, we see the duplicity of the snake, and how do snakes talk to persons? Is it really a snake, or is it really in the person's mind, in Eve's mind, to eat that apple because she's told not to?
Yeah, but we're all descendants of that human nature.
Yes, yes.
That's the scary part.
I mean, yes, basically. And so I think that's what the Bible is showing us. I mean, you look at these things as we see human nature, and we see the good and the bad in the human nature. I mean, who would be willing, we look at Abraham willing to kill Isaac for his belief in God. I mean, that's pretty drastic.
Natalie, you have your hand up?
Yeah. You see often in neighborhoods where people are being rounded up by the police more often, where they don't have the kinds of representation with lawyers that people with more money have. And a lot of the times they take things, in their own hands, simply because they've learned that the courts really, many times, are not fair when it comes to them. And so this still goes on, taking, things in your own hand. And I don't think it's just isolated cases.
Okay, any final comments, Steve?
Nope.
Well, we jumped over quite a lot of territory today.
Yes.
I don't know that I have any final thoughts, but we'll continue our pursuit of understanding of the Torah next week.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Back to you, Steve. Any announcements?
Not that I have, no, sir.
Okay, then let's do the final blessing.
All right. Together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet chai olam notah b'tokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us the teaching of truth, implanting it within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen.
Amen.
All right, everyone, have a good rest of the week.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys, hopefully everyone next week. We had a good crowd. We had 13 today. So
Okay.
good. That's good. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a safe flight home.
Thank you.
It's warmer here.
Good.
It's not warmer
here.
Page 110 next week. Okay.
Yes. Hang on. No. 93.
What is that?
93.
93?
Yeah.
Oh, I have the old pages here. Okay, 93.
Throw that away.
I'm
Shred it.
gonna throw it away. I'm throwing it away
Right.
right now.
Okay, and Natalie, where can we sign the petition for abortion law?
I have all my petitions. If there's any way for me to meet anybody, I'd be glad to come.
Where are you at?
No, I would come to you.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the Northwest Valley at Trilogy in Vistancia.
Okay, I got you.
But I would be happy, you know, to come down your end
Oh, it
and
froze up on
Okay.
me again. Okay.
have
Alright.
people sign.
All right. Very good. I'll keep in contact and let you know. Okay?
Great, Steve. Thank you.
So much. Bye-bye.
Bye.